Hello, everybody. Patty Ho, your Bay Area real estate expert. Today, I'm going to talk about Proposition 19. For those of you that reach out to me, I promised I would do a piece on this new law, and I apologize for the delay. It was just a lot of information for me to learn and absorb. And so I took some time and did some major studying, and I was able to put together a quick little summary, really keeping it at a very high level and hitting the critical points. So I'm going to share with you, sort of in a nutshell, everything that I think you need to know about this new law that's going to come into effect in about 2 weeks. Okay. So before we begin, let's take care of some administrative items first. Okay. So I do have a disclaimer here that I would like you guys to read before I get started. So it basically states that all the content that is being presented here is to provide summary of information only, and it should not be used as legal interpretation of the law for any purposes. Okay. So Proposition 19, I'm going to briefly talk about why it's important, how it affects your taxes, and things to consider before it goes into effect. Okay. So Proposition 19, to understand what it is, everyone should really have a basic understanding of Prop 13, 58, and 193. So for those of you who are homeowners in California, you should be pretty much familiar with Prop 13, right? Essentially, it protects you from major property tax increases, limiting it to an increase of no more than 2% a year. Prop 58 and 193 have to do with asset transfer between parent to child and grandparent to child, and we're going to talk more about that later. Okay. So first come first, I'd like to share with you some background information about this new law. Why are we talking about it? What happened? So this ballot measure was passed last November by a marginal win of 51% versus 49%. The major backers of this ballot measure are National Association of Realtors and California Association of Realtors. Together, they poured in about $40 million worth of campaign. And there was also another small donation from the Coalition of Firefighters and Labor Union. Okay. So essentially, there are two elements to this new law. One has to do with property tax implication that will go into effect on February 16th. So because the 16th actually ends on a holiday, the recorder's office will be closed starting the 12th, the Friday, through the 16th. Okay. So for all recording and filing purposes, the true deadline is really February 11th. Okay. And the second part of this law has to do with seniors 55 and older and disaster victims finding a replacement property in California. And that will go into effect April 1st. Okay. Prop 19 is an amendment to California Constitution. The legislature and Board of Equalization are the ones that will be responsible for creating the rules as well as implementing them. The county's assessor's office will be the one that's administering the change. It's very important to know who the responsible government agencies are for this change. Since this law is still so new and there's so many questions that are yet to be answered, it's important that we know where we can find answers to our question down the line when the information becomes available, right? Okay, so moving on. Proposition 13 that was overwhelmingly passed in 1978. So I'm going to show you a classic example of how under the current law, Prop 13 serves as a huge tax benefit for homeowners, okay? So let's take a look at our example here. So you have a house that you purchased a long time ago, back in 1990. Prop 13 basically says, when you purchase a property, your assessed value, or we should call the taxable value, they're basically the same thing, is calculated based on how much you bought it for, okay? It then limits your tax increase to maximum 2% a year. So over time, your tax base increases at a pretty steady pace, right? But in reality, for many of us, especially those of you that live in the Bay Area, properties have increased in value more drastically over time. So it's very possible that your house is worth up to 1.5 million today, right? So as long as you keep holding on to your property, there will be no reassessment, right? So this is a very good deal because in reality, you have a property that's 1.5 million and you're really paying 185,000 worth of property tax. Of course, there are exceptions when homeowners go through major renovation, reconstruction, expansion, adding a second story or a bedroom or a bathroom. Things like that do trigger reassessments, but we're not going to talk about that here today, okay? So what triggers a reassessment? Well, whenever there's a change in ownership. Some of the common ways properties change hands are through the sale of the home, gifting it to someone, or at time of death. So let's elaborate our example a little bit further. So your house that was bought in 1990 for 100,000 has an assessed value of 185,000. Your annual property tax bill is approximately 2,300, right? You grow old and you decide to retire and sell your home. The new owners buy the property for 1.5 million. Now, the new assessed value on this property then becomes 1.5 million, which translates into an annual property tax bill of 18,000. Now, that's a huge change, right? From 2,300 to 18,000. So it then begs the question, are there any exclusions to this reassessment? Under the current law, Propositions 58 and 193 allow family transfer of principal residence only between parent to child and grandparent to child without reassessment. There is also no limit on the value of the home, and there are no restrictions on the use of the property. So in reality, the inheriting child can use it as a vacation home, as a second home, or as an investment property, a rental, whatever they want, right? For all the other properties, such as vacation home, investment property, commercial building, and farmlands, you have a combined limit of 1 million assessed value, okay? So you can literally have 5 properties that you purchased back in 1930s that have an assessed value of 200,000 each. You can then transfer all of that to your children with the low tax basis without reassessment. Huge benefit, right? So what's changed under the new Prop 19 framework? Starting February 16, let me move over here, okay? For your principal residence, so that part hasn't changed. It still has to be your principal residence, okay? You can still transfer your low tax base, but only up to your current taxable value plus 1 million exclusion, okay? Another change is that the inheriting child must use it as their primary residence and move into the house within 12 months, okay? Your child must file homeowner's exemption to prove residency. And we don't have details on how long the law requires the child to remain residing in that property to be eligible for this exclusion. So that's something we need to kind of just keep an eye out and just find out. And there will be no exclusion on all the other properties, okay? So if your parents built up a very nice investment portfolio over time, as soon as your child inherits it, he or she will no longer carry over the low tax basis, right? Their property taxes will be based on the full fair market value as soon as they take over. Okay. So let's take a look at some example of parent-to-child transfer and a different tax treatment. Scenario number 1, no reassessment. Okay. So you have a house that has an assessed value of 500,000 and the fair market value is about 1.2 million. After transfer, your child moves into the house and claims it as his principal residence. So what is the new assessed value? We take the current assessed value of 500,000 plus the 1 million exclusion, and that gives us 1.5 million. Let's just call it figure 8, okay? We then take the market value and we compare that against figure 8, see which one is greater. So in our scenario, the market value is less than figure 8, therefore there will be no reassessment. the assessed value will remain at 500,000 when your child takes over. Okay. Scenario number 2, partial reassessment. Okay. So still the same house, assessed value at 500,000, but this time our fair market value is at 1.8 million. After transfer, child moves in and claims it as his primary residence. What is the new assessed value? So we do the same math. We take the current assessed value plus 1 million exclusion. That gives us 1.5 million, figure A. We compare that against the market value of 1.8 million. Now, in this scenario, the market value 1.8 million is greater than the 1.5 million. So we have a delta of 300,000. We then need to add this to the parent's assessed value. So we take the 500,000 plus 300,000, that equals 800,000, and this becomes the child's new assessed value, what we call a blended tax rate. Okay. So that's a significant change from 500,000 to 800,000, right? Okay, scenario number 3, full reassessment. So the same house, assessed value at 500,000, fair market value is 1.8 million. Now, here's the difference. After transfer, the child does not use as principal residence, okay? And does not sell it either, right? So if the child decides to keep hanging on to it, what is the new assessed value? There will be no exclusion. So as soon as the child takes over, or as soon as the parent passes, right, the new assessed value will be readjusted to fair market value at 1.8 million. Now, if you look at the change here from 500,000 tax base to $1.8 million tax base, it's a huge, huge tax increase, right? All right, so let's talk about the second element of this new law, okay? So this Proposition 19 actually provides some expanded benefits to the existing law, Proposition 60 and Proposition 90. That has to do with seniors 55 and older and disaster victims. Under the current law, qualified candidates can keep their current tax base and carry it over to a replacement property. Okay. And that's only one time, right? One time for qualified candidates, right? And there are also some limitation on the value of the replacement property. So there are different scenarios. So basically at 100%, 105%, 110%, depending on the length of the ownership of the previous residence, okay? So now under the new law, they can do it up to 3 times, and they can do it anywhere in California. So before, they can only buy the replacement property in participating counties. And there were a handful of counties that I remember that didn't participate in reciprocating this. So now the new law basically eliminates that. So it doesn't matter which county, you can move wherever you want within California, okay? And there is no limit on the value of the replacement property. They will just need to pay the blended rate on the incremental value, right? So for example, if you sell your home for $1 million and you decide to retire and you buy a home closer to the beach for 1.2 million, right? So there's no limit on the value of the replacement property. You just have to pay property tax on the incremental 200,000, okay? Okay, so now we have a good understanding of this law. What is the action item? What are some of the things that we should consider? Well, I definitely encourage you to have a conversation with your estate planner and even with your children. And some of you that are considering transferring the assets to your children now should really consider the financial or the tax impacts to your family, right? We're talking about gift tax, estate tax, inheritance tax, and capital gain tax, right? Or another option is just to leave it, right? So if you talk to your children, if they think there is a pretty good chance that they will sell it as soon as they inherit it, right? You can then take advantage of the step-up basis, right? So that pretty much means when it comes to time for the parents passing, the child takes over. For tax reporting purposes, the IRS pretty much views it as your child bought the property at 1 million. And if they then sell it for a million, there is literally no gain, so they don't need to pay any taxes on capital gain, right? And property rights, so there a lot of you are having trouble, making a decision right now because for personal reasons, once you've signed your deed over, you no longer have control for the home that you do occupy and live in, right? And of course, for a lot of us who still have a mortgage on the house that we own, we should be familiar with the due on sale clause. So I really don't know how lenders go about checking this, but if they do find out that the house is no longer under your name, they do have the right to call the loan. So if that happens, you'll either have to come up with the money or get it refinanced. So there's definitely some major financial consequences there, right? So all in all, I think it's not a bad idea to really seek some professional help right now. I've heard some of the people are considering doing a irrevocable trust that will hopefully be a good instrument to avoid tax increases when it comes to passing their properties over to their children. But with an irrevocable trust, it's a little bit tricky because once you set that up, there are many things that you cannot change and cannot be reversed, right? So all in all, whatever you decide to do, I think it's important that you do talk to your family, your CPA, your estate planner, or even your attorney to find out what your options are. That's really in the best interest of your family. And if you were to transfer your assets or to change anything, just remember that the recording has to be before the 11th of February. So I'm still yet to find out if it's okay to post market by the 11th, or it has to be hard on recorded by the 11th, which is pretty time pressing. So I'll find out more about that, and if I do, but for now, to stay on the safe side, I'm just going to assume that 11th is the hard deadline. Everything has to be done, filed, and recorded on that date. Okay. All right, so that pretty much wraps up what I have for Proposition 19. I hope everybody learned something. And as far as the impact on the real estate market, I do anticipate more inventory hitting the market starting April, now that there is more flexibility for seniors and qualified individuals to move out of some of the expensive areas. People now have less tax benefits to keep hanging on to good old mom's house, right? So hopefully there will be more properties getting turned over for sale. Yeah, so that's it. That's all I have for today. If you have any questions, do reach out to me, leave me a comment, send me a private message. For those of you who do know me personally, just call me. Okay. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye bye.